Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 5:06 on this Monday morning in your nation's capital. Let's get things rolling the right way so we can have a great day, a great week, great month, great year, great election, and then everything will fall into place and everything will be fine. Right, Julie Gunlock? That's what they promised me.
So easy.
It's just really easy. But it all begins with today and how you get out of bed right now and get things going. At 7:05, Joe DeGeneva will make it all make sense. At 7:35, Trevor Maddich gives us a valedictory address on this year's Commanders season, what to look forward to with the second-round draft pick, and a new head coach. At 8:05, Tom Fitton. And then at 8:35, Representative Chip Roy. I'm Larry O'Connor, alongside Julie Gunlock.
Good morning.
With incredibly straight blonde hair today. Did you use one of those straightener things to do that?
My hair is actually very straight.
Is it? See, I can never tell. Here's the thing about women. Can we talk about chicks, man? So, like, women who are born with straight hair, how many pieces of equipment do you have in your bathroom right now to make your hair curly? Yeah. Right? You have, like, all these devices.
This style, it's funny because I have friends who have very curly hair, and they would kill.
Exactly.
For this
is the point I'm making. You were
Yep.
born with straight hair, and you have all these devices to curl it,
Yes.
right? When
Which
you
I
have a
do
big night out.
sometimes. Yeah.
And then Meredith, who has a natural curl to her hair, we have the amount. It's
She
like
comes within an inch of burning it off. Yes, exactly.
She has her
We all
own
do.
room dedicated to straightening her hair out. It's like we're having a big night out. I'm going to straighten it. And I'm like, honey, all the women who have straight hair are spending all night curling their hair so it can look like yours. Why don't you just swap heads?
Right. Well,
everybody.
that would be nice. That would be
Easier,
nice.
probably.
We can put a man on the moon, but we can't figure out a way to straighten people's hair easily. No. This is my easiest way to do my hair. Okay, enough. Are you bored now?
Not at all. Not at all.
You made one passing comment. I could talk about this for an
hour.
hour.
You saw my face. I was just trying to figure out how to transition this to Lloyd Austin. Yeah. Clearly, he spent a few days at Walter Reed trying to straighten his hair. That was the voluntary medical procedure he was trying to go through, and there's no reason to share that information with anyone. We don't know what the procedure was.
What plastic surgery procedure do you think?
There has been a suggestion that it was a Brazilian butt job.
Oh,
because the women do like the bootay.
Yes.
Or it was perhaps it could have been a hair transplant, but he's got a pretty good head of hair, and you don't have to be hospitalized for 4 days for that.
He's not very wrinkly.
No. He could use to lose a few pounds. Maybe it
could be a lipo thing.
or the band thing that you do in the stomach. What's that called?
Be.
Yeah. Either way, Lloyd Austin underwent some sort of medical procedure at Walter Reed. He was in the ICU at one point, which sounds kind of serious.
Yeah.
Certainly intense. That's what the I stands for.
Something went wrong during the surgery.
We are told by the Pentagon that he was on leave while this happened. Here's the thing, though. When you go on leave, you had a medical procedure a couple of months ago.
I had an emergency appendectomy.
We were all notified by you.
Yes.
Immediately. In fact, I'm surprised you didn't live stream the procedure.
I could have.
Holy crap, this hurts so much.
It's
pretty much what we were getting in the text messages. Lots of all caps.
Yeah.
Lots of all caps.
I'm fine, by the way, everyone.
Yes, fabulous. But you notified everyone. You notified your boss.
I did.
You notified people. Funny, you have a critically important job here at Independent Women's Forum as mother of 3 children, as husband, or as wife to your husband.
Everyone know.
You have a very responsible job. I'm not going to lie. Not quite as responsible as the Secretary of Defense of the United States of America.
Okay, I'll give you that.
While we have troops in harm's way. I mean, you think about the last 2 weeks, we've had Navy vessels fired upon.
We had soldiers killed, or not killed. Actually, I don't think they were killed, but they were injured near Syria.
Yes, and in Iraq.
Yes.
We retaliated and fired back on a foreign nation.
Yeah.
Our Secretary of Defense was, for all our National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, knew, or the Commander-in-Chief, President of the United States, knew, Lloyd Austin was right there handling everything. But he wasn't.
He wasn't.
And then when it was discovered that he had gone for, what is it, 4 days, they're telling us now? But who knows? It could have been a week.
Yeah.
The procedure,
no one knew.
Nobody knew. He didn't tell anyone. And then when the Pentagon was pressed about this, they said, well, the Deputy Secretary of Defense took over all of his responsibilities. Well, now it turns out the Deputy Secretary of Defense was on vacation in Puerto Rico.
Good grief.
Taking over his responsibilities. So, and our friend Ben Domenech, who is a Fox News contributor and a columnist at Spectator, he took to the X.com social media page and said, where are all the people with the hand clap emoji saying, this is not normal?
Right.
Remember during the Trump administration, any innovation that the Trump administration, anything they did that was different from 40 years, because, he was kind of elected to be different.
Right.
This is not normal. I don't think it's normal that the Secretary of Defense just sort of checks out and says, hey, guys, He didn't even say that. That's the thing. I've tried to sort of like soft pedal this, but no, he just disappeared and told no one. No one knew.
Yeah.
And certainly you can't tell me his Deputy Secretary of Defense knew, because I'm thinking they wouldn't be in Puerto Rico for vacation.
Also, who's his deputy? Who's the deputy? No one knows who this deputy is. Do you know? I don't know.
Some person.
Well,
I don't know.
No,
I have no idea who the Deputy Secretary of Defense is.
You just listed some of the things going on in the world. Kind of a dangerous time.
Biden was and while Biden was in the Virgin Islands during all of this, St. Croix, just a few nautical miles away from Jeffrey Epstein Island, but I'm sure there's no connection there. Everyone was asked, well, is it really good for him to be there with Israel going on and Ukraine going on? And now what? We had deployed, so you have to understand, we mobilized our military to the Mediterranean and to the Gulf to sort of tamp down the violence and the reactions going on from Yemen and all these other countries. So we had active military operations going on that put men and women in harm's way. The commander-in-chief was in the Virgin Islands, but the message was like, well, he's president no matter where he is, and the cabinet's involved. Everyone who needs to be in the chain of command is involved. Well, clearly they weren't.
Right.
Because the Secretary of Defense was MIA.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's insulting. I said, when you had your emergency medical situation, you notified your boss.
Yeah.
He did not notify his boss, which is the president. But you know who else is his boss? Us.
Yes.
We're his boss. The legislative branch is his boss. There is a chain of command here. There is a constitutional role here.
And we'll see. Will
he
their
flipped
boss?
us all off.
Yeah, Congress, as you just noted, is his boss. Will they do anything, Larry? What do you think? Will they do anything?
I did see that Senator Tom Cotton put out a strongly worded message.
Oh well, that's good.
So
there should be congressional hearings.
There should absolutely be congressional hearings. Add those to the hearings that we're having this week for the impeachment of Secretary Mayorkas and the ongoing investigation into President Biden and the impeachment that should be coming there. And we're starting to get something happening. But it's another example of the arrogance of power that these people roll in with, and what the media has allowed them to enjoy. Right. Because they think to themselves, is it okay if I do this? Of course it is. Who's going to hold us accountable?
But also remember, there was a complication during surgery that sent him to ICU. So this wasn't expected. I'm sure this elective procedure was supposed to be maybe one overnight stay at the hospital. Maybe in my case, it was like a same day thing for my emergency appendectomy. You go home that night. So he wasn't expecting this. And so that's another thing, is that he was in the ICU for something like 3 or 4 days. They didn't even notify at that point. I mean, I'm not giving him an excuse if he doesn't notify instantly. Like he should told everyone, where I'm going to the hospital, I'm having this procedure. But the fact that then something went wrong, then he was in the ICU for 4 days and still didn't. That to me is what's really outrageous.
Biden wasn't aware of it. The National Security Advisor wasn't aware of it. The White House wasn't aware of it. Or here's the best part: if people in the White House were aware of it, they neglected to tell the commander-in-chief.
Yes.
Which is kind of an issue too. All right, a little bit more on this, and I love and here's the thing: when we're on the air at 5 a.m, vast majority of the people, vast percentage of the people listening to us are either active duty or retired members of the military.
That's right.
They're military contractors. They're people who are part of the chain of command, who have had to deal with the chain of command and the responsibility that goes along with that. They should be the most outraged. The double standard here is so ridiculous. I know people. I spent the weekend with people in the military. If they, walk around the block, they have to notify everybody. It's insanity. It's insulting to the rest of us. It's 5:15 also. It's also 5:15. WMAL traffic and weather every 10 minutes first.
Now from GarageDoorRepair.com, the WMAL Stormwatch 7 forecast.
Did you see any snow this weekend? I didn't see that. Our executive producer, Heather Hunter, who lives a little bit more in the boondocks, she had snow. We had rain, right?
I was not happy because you promised me snow.
I know. I specifically
yes, you did.
said
You ramped it. You got me all excited.
Sunny skies today with 147 degrees there, and that'll happen. Tonight, increased clouds. Don't give me that look, all right? There will be snow at some point. Increased clouds with a low of 35 degrees. Just move to Frederick, all right? Or Winchester. Tuesday, tomorrow is going to rain after the morning commute. High of 54 degrees tomorrow. Tuesday night, rain continues through the night. Wednesday will be sunny with a high near 50. Right now, it is 39 degrees, 517.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live
From the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Need a new roof? Honor, respect, and trust your home with Valor. Visit valorhome.com.
WMAL, making sense of party politics, because somebody's got to hold their feet to the fire. Download the WMAL app to stream us for free.
So Joe Biden wasn't aware of this. Jake Sullivan announced he wasn't aware of it. Lloyd Austin still hasn't said a damn thing, certainly not an apology. But I just want to sort of reapply the last point that I was getting at, because I think it's worth saying. People in the military, people who wear the uniform, during this same time, starting December 22nd, we're told, is when he went in for a voluntary procedure of sorts. During that entire time, how many men and women were disciplined in the military because they didn't report for duty?
Right.
Because they were absent without leave, because they went into
failed to inform their supervisor or superior
at the chain of command that we have. How many of them had to suffer some kind of suspension or loss of pay or even worse, right around Christmas, right around New Year's? They would have loved to have just gone their way and done their own thing. And yes, I recognize Lloyd Austin resigned as a general so that he could be the Secretary of Defense. It is a civilian position, but he is the top of the Department of Defense. He is the top of that food chain and that chain of command, leading right up to when young members of the military, they need to memorize the chain of command, and they learn it all the way up to the President of the United States and the Secretary of Defense.
Yeah, and let's not pretend this guy hasn't been a military figure in
his
everyone.
Entire life.
Oh, we just see him as a civilian now. No. He is definitely within that culture.
The double standard, the rules for the two different sets of rules. We thought it only applied to the Justice Department.
Hunter
and throwing
Biden.
people in jail. yeah,
exactly.
But no. It permeates into this as well.
Yes.
It's Hunger Games.
It is.
That there is a separate set of rules for the elites, for the anointed, for the untouched. And you saw the headline from Axios. So Axios
Here we go.
puts out their story about the Lloyd Austin affair, and the headline is, Republicans erupt over secrecy in Defense Secretary's hospitalization. So the story is the Republican reaction.
Yeah, they'd reached their Politico, was it? Did you say, or Axios?
Axios
had reached its limits of use of pounce for the month, so they had to use a different word. But yeah, this is the PR machine, the mainstream media PR machine ramping up. Let's cover for the Biden administration.
Right.
You're absolutely right.
Because if this is a bad story for the Biden administration, ultimately that will end up helping Republicans, helping Donald Trump, and that we can't have.
Right.
And so we're just going to look the other way on all of it and make excuses, and that's what you'll see today.
And also, I love how the media also isn't outraged that they didn't know, right? Like, normally you would have someone say, someone who covers the military has that beat saying, this deserved a press conference. He's going in for a minor surgery.
Yeah.
He'll be out in 24 hours. Oops. Okay. A couple days later or a day later, they have to keep him for observation, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that media isn't also outraged that they weren't informed is another one of these double standards.
By the way, the White House has also reiterated that Joe Biden has full confidence in his Secretary of Defense despite the fact that he kept this information from him and basically lied to the American people. But that's pretty par for the course as well. Mm-hmm. It's 521.
Making sense of your world.
Appreciate what you do.
News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
I completely agree with what you're saying.
Making sense of the news.
It's 527 now. We'll talk to Joe DeGenova coming up at 7:05 about the legal aspects of this. And yes, what the congressional oversight of Lloyd Austin just going AOL might be. Deb, you said who's the Deputy Secretary of Defense. I have your answer. Kathleen Hicks. Kathleen Hicks would be your Deputy Secretary of Defense. She was on vacation in Puerto Rico at the time and was prepared to act and exercise the powers of Secretary if required. Well, I feel better now.
But she was not informed.
But she didn't know. Right? Yeah. The hospitalization of Walter Reed, he was admitted on January 1st for complications following a recent elective medical procedure. He doesn't tell us what it is. We're all going to come.
FOIA it.
Whatever
Somebody
we
needs to
come up
FOIA
with
this.
is going to be worse than what it actually was. Okay? That's how this works. Representative Jim Banks, Republican of Indiana, said it's very concerning, and it sounds like the president doesn't even know about it. Yes, thank you. That's correct. He didn't know about it. But senators are upset and congressmen are upset, and that it's the other thing that sort of drives me mad is that we always say, "Do people forget about 9/11?" Yeah, we have officially forgotten about 9/11.
Oh, absolutely.
When the Secretary of Defense can just go off and do this.
Yeah.
And again, if we weren't in crisis internationally right now, and by the way, if our military weren't meeting its recruitment goals, if the military weren't in a place where it appears to be in crisis at any given time as well, where they don't have a fully staffed Army or Navy, and we don't seem to have any solution beyond just increasing our DEI protocols and CRT instruction. It's just people have an image right now of the military, which the one thing in this town that people had a good impression of was the United States military, and that has deteriorated. And this is the man in charge, and this sends a signal that it just doesn't matter. None of it matters.
Yeah, none of it matters. And also, at the same time, we're being told by the media and many government officials and Biden administration officials is that if Trump becomes president, it's the end of everything.
Oh, right.
Right?
Yeah.
And you can't. I think the American public is smarter, obviously, than the mainstream media gives them credit for. But most Americans are not going to be able to square these two things, that he's somehow the most dangerous man in America.
Trump's the threat to our
and then
norms.
The grown-ups, the people that were supposed to bring the norms back, who are leaving the room with no one in charge,
right.
That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
We're supposed to accept these two concepts.
Right.
It's not working.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I'll say, if Trump wins the election, the person he chooses to be Secretary of Defense won't do something like this.
Right.
But, yeah, we're supposed to embrace the adults in the room, the grown-ups who can really get it done. It's 5:30 in your nation's capital.
WMAL FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station.
Making sense of the news.
News Talk 105.9.
News now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
Long here on this Monday morning, your nation's capital. We put in more work today than Lloyd Austin has done in the last 2 weeks as Secretary of Defense. Although, I'll be honest, that's not really saying a whole lot. Coming up at 7:05, Joe DeGenevo will join us. 7:35, Trevor Maddich. 8:05, Tom Fitton of Judicial Watch. And at 8:35, Representative Chip Roy of Texas. I'm Larry O'Connor alongside Julie Gunlock. So, Julie, you see what shirt I'm wearing today.
I do.
It's for what?
Did you just pick that out of the closet? Just it was on top of
No, well... So I'm wearing a maize and blue University of Michigan Wolverine sweatshirt over my maize and blue University of Michigan T-shirt.
Yeah, you're all decked
because
out.
today's the national championship
That's
of the college football season, and I'm a big Michigan football fan.
Are you?
But I like sports in general. I do. I care quite a bit about sports. Article in USA Today. It's a column by Dace Potas is his name. I don't know who Dace is, but the headline really hit me. Generation Z doesn't care about sports, and that's part of a bigger problem. So, I'm doing this Exodus 90 thing where you give up all these things and stuff. And everyone, so I've got some Gen Z guys in there with me. I've got some millennial guys in there. I've got some Gen X guys in my little fraternity. Mm-hmm. The Gen X guys and millennial guys are all going nuts because they're going to have to give up television during the playoffs and the Super Bowl and March Madness.
Oh.
And the Gen Z guys are like, I don't care. I got to give up video games. I got to give up cold showers. So
warm showers.
Really is a generational difference here where these guys don't really care that much about sports. Now, this isn't across the board. Most of the guys that go to the Naval Academy that I interact with who are midship, they really focus on sports. But they're mostly athletes coming from high school, that end up in the military.
My boy, well, I have one boy who's particularly sporty. I mean, he cares deeply about sports.
Yeah.
So why do you think that is?
I don't know, because I was not an athlete. I know that comes as a shock to you. But in high school, I wasn't an athlete, but sports was a huge part of my life.
But was it a big part of your dad's life?
Yes.
See, I wonder.
You think that's what it is?
You know,
that doesn't make sense, though, because the dad, Gen X is the dads to Gen Z, right? So,
right, but we've been talking a lot about lately in sort of parenting realms about how parents are it's weird. There's this weird dichotomy going on where they can be overbearing, but then they don't spend as much time with their kids in a sort of joyful way, or like a
perhaps.
I wonder if there's some breakdown in that dads aren't enjoying it with their kids
and passing that down from the generation. Like my family, we were and let me read from this opinion piece because it really resonates with me, because I could have written this. I'm a very lucky sports fan at the moment. My Detroit Lions are in the playoffs. The Red Wings are looking like a promising team. And this Monday, the University of Michigan Wolverines are competing in the national championship. The Detroit sports community is thriving. And even in Chicago, it feels right at home whenever I run into a fellow fan of one of my childhood teams. All week, I've been looking forward to heading over to the local Michigan bar Monday night to watch the big game. And it's true. Like when I'm passing by somebody and they're wearing a Michigan shirt in the airport, right? And it's like, go blue, go blue.
My gosh, when my husband, go Bucks. Like,
go Bucks,
yeah,
right.
Yeah,
it's the Bucks. That's a failed college football team, right? Ohio State.
Move on.
Anyway, he says, I'm not your typical member of Gen Z, spanning from 97 to 2012. We're a generation of social isolation. First it was music festivals, then it was after-work drinks. Now up on the no-fun generation's chopping block is sports fandom. Hey there, sports fan. Why is Gen Z different from the rest of you? So he's saying all those other, like Gen Z doesn't go out to bars and go out to drink. They don't go out to concerts really and socialize.
Date.
All the socializing stuff. What's remarkable about it is this is the generation that has come of age during what we call social media.
Yes.
But social media has actually removed social activities and socializing.
Human contact.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I think for men,
it's interesting. So according to this study, only 23% of Generation Z describes themselves as passionate sports fans, as opposed to 42% of millennials, 33% of Gen X, and 31% of baby boomers. So yeah, much lower. But interesting that millennials certainly do.
Yeah. Well, and he wraps it up with this. The gradual loss of interest in sports is a symptom of a larger problem, which is that Gen Z lacks both civic involvement and any interest in attaining it. Mm-hmm. This has been a significant factor in the erosion of the community fabric where Gen Z lives. As we spend an increasing amount of time tuned into our digital lives, many of us lose sight of the traditional forms of community that previous generations relied on. So that is the sense of community is, like yesterday at the Commanders game, where like they scored a touchdown, I think one, and the fans sang "Hail to the Redskins," not "Hail to the Commanders,"
sure,
because they grew up with that identity. And it's like, why do you keep rooting for this team? Well, because this is our team,
right?
That's a generational thing. This new generation doesn't have that same sense of loyalty. They don't have the same sort of identity that is woven into the fabric of who they are.
I mean, you think about it, Larry, when I started into the workworkse, there was no internet. I mean, that is astonishing. That makes me also feel extremely old.
I remember when email was introduced the first time in my professional life.
And it's so funny because I was definitely the Regis Philbin type person. I was like, this won't last. It's so funny when I think back of my thinking. I was born like an 80-year-old. So, but this really is interesting. But for the last 30 years, we've been running an experiment on how this will affect humans. And now we know, not well. And this youngest generation, look, there are exceptions to that. Look, your daughter, it's amazing. She graduated the Naval Academy now. I mean, she's incredible. But there are exceptions to this rule. Mm-hmm. But in general, this latest generation is suffering because there weren't controls put in place. And now we have even public schools saying they're going to go no phones, no technology, essentially.
To sort of try to reverse
There's
it.
Some attempt to reverse it.
So you think that? I think that's a big part of it. But I also, and I don't have the answers as to why this happened, but I do know that it's a problem because I do worry about young men. I worry about young men greatly. And I do think that focusing on sports, it's an outlet. It's an outlet for their energy, for their passions, for loyalty, for creating. A lot of people in our society don't have things they can bond over. When they can find those things that they bond over and create a sense of community around, it's so instrumental. And I think it's a very insightful column. Also, go blue tonight. It's 5:44. I want to continue this conversation about sports. Sports is a big part of our life, although, as this article suggests, maybe not Generation Z. But you wanted to sort of pick up on part of that.
Well,
too.
I mean, I'm raising 3 boys, and it's interesting how you realize that boys, this is how they talk to other boys through sports. They talk, and I've always heard this phrase or this explained that girls talk face to face, where boys talk shoulder to shoulder, and sure, men go out and have beers and talk to each other face to face, but there's a lot of communication in sports that boys engage in, but it's not the way women do.
It's a good point. That's a good point.
And I think people have lost sight of that a little bit, and why it's really important to put your kids in sports, even if they don't maybe want to do it.
Right. It's not about them always achieving at the highest level.
Yeah.
I almost feel like, and this may be our generation's fault, that if our kids didn't excel or something, that we thought, well, what's the point of all these practices and all these things?
Well, there's always needs. I feel like girls get together and they have no problem, chit-chatting, whereas boys, there needs to be sort of a reason to get together. And my oldest, who isn't into really team sports, he now runs long distances with one of his best friends, but they get together to run.
But if your husband asked them to come to a game with him, they'd all
go.
love it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Even if they're not, That's a big part. It's like not even just playing sports, but just watching and
part of it.
Being a fan and being a part of a community around a sport. And I know a lot of people analyze and say, well, fantasy football has ruined it because you don't root for a team anymore, you root for the players. No, you can do both. I promise. Yeah. I do both. It's an issue. And also add to that the degradation of the meaning of men in general, let alone men in sports.
In all popular culture, men are always the stupid ones. The wives are always rushing in to save the day from their idiotic husbands. Just look at advertising, how men are cast in most advertisements. And kids pick up on that.
Yeah. And you're right. And a lot of times the men are depicted, who are sports fans, and a lot of this has to do with the sports networks in general that promote beer ads on their networks that make men look like Neanderthal buffoons. Kids pick up on that. Oh, so being a sports fan means I'm like this?
Yeah.
And who wants to be a part of that club?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you've then got the degradation of women's sports, by the way, with the latest announcement from USA Boxing. USA Boxing has now decided to allow transgender women to compete against female boxers. In other words, biological men who present as women will be able to box starting in 2024 against biological women. Now, I mentioned the midshipmen that we sponsor at the Naval Academy. One of them is literally a national championship boxer. He won the NCAA college championship for his weight class 2 years in a row. And I was talking to him about this over the weekend. I said, you saw what USA Boxing did? And he just looked at me and goes, Larry, a woman's going to get killed.
Yes.
A woman is good. And in amateur USA Boxing, they wear it's like golden gloves. They wear the pads around their head, and stuff. And it's only 3 rounds. And it's all, it's not like a big 15-round professional boxing match or UFC or anything. But you get hit hard in the face. You get hit hard in the head.
Well,
and the reflexes and the strength to block a punch. Women do not have the kind of strength to block a punch from a man.
We've had examples of this. Fallon Fox.
The UFC fighter.
She broke her opponent's skull in an MMA fight. So this was a male-bodied, transgender-identifying boxer, a male, fighting a female, and she broke her skull, nearly killed her. So we know exactly what's going to happen. That's what makes me so mad about this. We know exactly what's going to happen, and they're allowing it.
While boxers under the age of 18 must still compete as their birth gender, transgender fighters will be permitted to fight in the category of their choice. By the way,
of their choice.
That makes no sense. If you're going to make an age distinction, you should do it the other direction. I mean, I can see a 16-year-old boy getting his butt kicked by a 16-year-old woman or a 17-year-old woman. But once you get past 18, 19, the differences are ginormous.
It is.
Now, the total testosterone level in serum has to be below a certain number, but we already know that the testosterone level is not as important if you've been training and conditioning for years with your muscles and your speed and your reflexes. And I kid you, I have no doubt that a young woman who is a boxer is going to get severely injured, if not literally killed.
It is so terrifying as someone who's raising boys.
Yeah.
I can't in any way control my 15-year-old. He is so strong.
Yeah.
And I'm no schlump, but I can't in any way overpower him.
One other thing, it took a long time for me to sort of warm up to women's boxing. I've watched some women's boxing now at the military academies and in women. It's still a little weird for me to watch two women beating up on each other. But who in the hell wants to watch a man beat up a woman in the ring? And that needs to end now. 5:54.